I remember back in 2016, there was some controversy surrounding the remake of Roots, a famous and influential depiction about slavery during its time. It was that very subject matter that was causing problems when it was remade for the History Channel. Specifically, the controversy was about the idea of overabundance when it came to films about slavery. The idea that slave stories were the only kind of stories Hollywood would take, and that anything depicting black men and women in a more successful light wouldn't bring in the money.
But to a certain extent, he is right. I get his point. I get what he's trying to say. He's what he's saying is that there's no balance, man. You know, because let's be honest. You know, when there's something out there, whenever a black dude getting his ass whooped, that's when Hollywood smells it smells money and it smells Oscar, and it's so transparent.
There was this growing impression that the only kinds of roles being seen painted black people in a demeaning light, and there was a desire to have Hollywood move away from these types of films in the future. It was a matter of dignity. Dignity is the central theme of 12 Years a Slave. A story based in real life, it follows the journey of Solomon Northup as he is abducted from his life as a free man into a harrowing life of slavery, and it does not flinch for a second. This film is profoundly harsh, and everything about its construction reflects that. It has a score, but it's seldom used. It's got dialogue, but it's seldom required. This is where the editing shines. It's a very quiet film, so the moments that aren't so quiet hit you like a truck. It's a very tense viewing experience, and that atmosphere is very much by design. There's no peace for the slaves, and every moment where there is some form of downtime, you're waiting very anxiously for the next shoe to drop, and it always does. Much of how the film is framed really underlines just how separated the two races are. The camera treats black people as livestock as much as the characters do in many situations. Really, what this creates is a sense of isolation. Isolation from his family, his pride as a man, and isolation from freedom in a country that was built on the very concept. The film is beautifully shot, and even this feels intentional to contrast how horrifying the events of this film are. Beautiful shots of the bayou contrast with men being lynched. Wide shots of the southern expanse are contrasted with slaves working and sometimes dying in them. As a viewer, you can't really get lost in all that country. Your eyes are forced on one place. You are forced to view this experience. Throughout everything that happens, Solomon has to grapple with the conflict of maintaining his dignity as a man and survival. This is tested constantly, and often one aspect is sacrificed for the other. An intelligent slave isn't one that gets to live very long, so Solomon is forced to hide what he knows, like reading and writing. The times where he maintains this pride in his knowledge create very dangerous situations for him, and at the same time he must accept a slave name and act as property. On the inside, he never forgets who he is. He's a family man, he's a musician, and he's a man of success and ability. Dignity is the most basic right a human can have, and it's Solomon's fight to keep it that makes 12 Years a Slave so compelling. Ultimately, I see the argument being made against the amount of slave films that get released. Without a doubt, there is so much more for black culture to offer cinema than the brutal past that it suffered. I even think that this problem has steadily been improving since the controversy began. With all that said though, there is way too much value in films like 12 Years a Slave to be ignored or moved away from. Sure, maybe not all slave films are on the level of quality that 12 Years a Slave is, but it is important that this topic stays relevant to our culture as a whole. If dignity is the concern, then what better way to teach the solution than through understanding of these films and the lessons they bring on human decency and respect? There is dignity in even the worst places, and there will always be an importance in learning it.